One fought a war against the deadly and relentless Covenant Empire, the other against the powerful and terrifying Xenomorphs. The Colonial Marines from the Alien franchise set the template for Marines in a science fiction universe. UNSC Marines are one of the most notable, recent, and successful iterations of this template. But is the original better than what came after it? Can the Colonial Marines beat the UNSC Marines in a one-on-one battle? That's what we're going to be looking at today on this episode of Halo vs. Aliens. Who would win? Hey guys, this is EckhartsLadder. Hello and welcome to another Versus episode. Today we are once again taking the lovable Marines from the Halo franchise and putting them against another infantry squad. Specifically today, we're looking at the Colonial Marines from the Aliens franchise. In this battle, we're trying to predict who would win. A fire team consisting of 4 UNSC Marines or one consisting of 4 Colonial Marines. The fire teams will be of their ordinary composition, both in relation to equipment and in personnel. So the UNSC, for example, doesn't get Chip's Dubbo, while Vasquez won't be on the Colonial Marines side. In this episode, we're going to look at both of these forces, examining their training, their equipment, and their general skill. After that, we'll compare the two and try to see which one is better. The Colonial Marines, which are more formally known as the United States Colonial Marine Corps, first appeared in Aliens, in which several Colonial Marines took on a group of Xenomorphs. By the 2100s, the Marines are one of the most important aspects of the United States military. Let's first talk about equipment, and we'll start with protective gear. The protective gear on Colonial Marines is actually fairly rudimentary. Body-wise, they were covered with the M3 pattern personnel armor, which is essentially an armored vest. The vest does offer some protection, especially against small arms fire, but isn't meant to take direct hits. It is, however, along with the rest of the combat gear, quite light, giving the Marines a good degree of motion and allowing them to move quite quickly without tiring. On their heads, Marines are covered by an M10 pattern ballistic helmet. Aside from just protecting the soldier, the helmet also had a video camera, an infrared sensor, and a microphone. Moving now to weapons loadout, depending on the situation, of course, Colonial Marines would vary their loadout and the squad composition. The same obviously can be said with the UNSC Marines. For example, typically most squads would probably not have a sniper within them, especially if there's only 4 of them. However, in certain situations, for example if they were fighting in an open space, a sniper would be present in the squad. I've decided that for this battle, we're just going to go with a standard close to medium range loadout. I'll talk about what that means for the UNSC when I get to them, but for the Colonial Marines, we actually know what a typical squad layout looked like. Colonial Marines are broken into 2 fire teams, one called a rifle team and the other called a gun team. The rifle team had 2 riflemen, both armed with M41A pulse rifles. The fire team, however, in addition to having 1 Marine with an M41A operating in a support role, also had a Marine using an M56 smart gun. The name pulse rifle doesn't actually refer to the type of ammunition as some would expect, but rather to the firing mechanism. Pulse rifle fired traditional ammunition with a 99 round magazine. In addition, early pulse rifles would have had a grenade launcher built in, while later variants would have that connection modular, allowing the user to switch out the grenade launcher for whatever they wanted. Still, besides for the grenade launcher and perhaps the very large magazine, the gun isn't anything exceptional, and it's certainly not going to blow out of the water anything in the UNSC arsenal. There is, however, still the M56 smart gun. One member of the squad would be outfitted with this weapon, and it is a devastating one, and one that first appeared in the Aliens movie. The smart gun is insane. It's essentially a self-targeting, medium-range, heavy-power minigun. The M56 is worn on a harness, which not only allows the user to handle its weight, but also has various sensor components. These components allow the gun to track any target within a 30-degree cone directly in front of it. When the target is tracked, the gun points towards it, allowing the user to fire, and it does so with devastating accuracy. With a magazine of 500 rounds, a rate of fire of 1,200 rounds a minute, and each round being devastating in and of itself, add tracking into the mix, and you've got a very, very dangerous weapon. I was initially going to talk about training for the Colonial Marines here, but I think I'll wait until we get to the actual matchup to discuss the training differences and the experience differences of both the UNSC and the Colonial Marines. Alright, let's now talk about the UNSC Marines. Because I've gone over these guys a few times, most in depth in my Stormtrooper versus Marines video, I'm gonna keep this description fairly short. Unlike the Colonial Marines, who typically only fought skirmishes with either the Xenomorphs or the Predators, the UNSC Marines were engaged in a full-scale war against the Covenant. These soldiers were experienced, they were battle-hardened, and they were some of the best that humanity had to offer. Equipment-wise, the UNSC made use of the Marine Corps battle dress uniform. By the time of 2552, the BDU was built around the M52B body armor. The M52B is very effective against projectile-based weapons, although it does suffer somewhat against plasma or energy-based weaponry. The suit is also filled with electronic components, including some which make it difficult to track the user with electronic or with heat-based imaging. Compared to the Colonial Marines, the Marine body armor, I would argue, is more advanced and it is more protective. The UNSC Marine helmet is fairly similar. It would have had a microphone and a camera in order to communicate with other squad members, along with most likely some form of heads-up display. In both design and functionality, the two forces share a very similar helmet. Weapon-wise, the UNSC Marines would have carried a knife, they would have carried several frag grenades, and depending on their role, they would have carried one of several weapons. Assuming we're going for a close to medium range squad, most likely each one of the Marines would have had a sidearm, and as a primary weapon, they would have either had an assault rifle or a battle rifle, perhaps a DMR. In this situation, I'll give 2 Marines assault rifles, 1 a battle rifle, and 1 a DMR. Arguably, the specifics of these weapons aren't super important. What's important is the functionality. The MA5D or MA5 whatever, depending on the subversion, was an assault rifle which was effective at short and medium ranges, could be fired in bursts or fully automatic, and had great stopping power, particularly up close. Depending on the variant, the MA5 would carry 32 or over 60 rounds. We'll go with the MA5C from Halo 3, which carried 32. There's also the battle rifle and the DMR. The battle rifle can be fired at pretty much any range, although it would struggle with some long-range situations, and it is quite powerful, firing in a 3-bullet burst. The DMR was a medium to long-range weapon which fired single shots with incredible stopping power. Generally, UNSC weapons were filled with electronics. Many Marines would have had heads-up displays, which these weapons would have directly integrated with. This would allow the user to more accurately target their gun, bring their weapon up to bear quicker, and just generally operate more effectively. Each weapon also would have typically used the standard UNSC Marine armor-piercing full metal jacket ammunition. With that being said, let us now do the full comparison, and I'm going to start with a comparison of the skills, the experience, and the training of these two sides. Unfortunately, for both the UNSC and the Colonial Marines, we have a real lack of knowledge about how each individual government trains their soldiers. I'm going to assume that because it's wartime, the UNSC probably has less time to train their Marines than the Colonial government, but I don't really think that's super important. What is important, however, is that most Marines in the service would have been engaged with war against the Covenant for most, if not all, of their careers. This is a war which, despite being lost in space on pretty much every occasion by the UNSC, was winnable on ground, and winnable largely due to the sheer skill and tenacity of soldiers like UNSC Marines. UNSC Marines are smart, they're capable, they're great at working within a squad, and just generally, they fought terrifying enemies. I mean, Xenomorphs and Predators are scary, but they're more animals than anything else. The Covenant, especially elites and brutes, are deadly and terrifying warriors, and ones who want to kill you are fully sentient and are very capable of working together. Colonial Marines, on the other hand, just haven't seen the same kind of action. I mean, we know that they get dropped into hot zones and often have to fight dangerous alien species, but it's just not the same. Earth isn't on the line in most cases. They're not fighting a war where they're vastly outnumbered. It's just different circumstances, and generally I don't rate the competence of the Marines super high, especially after Aliens. Let's talk about technology, and really in this case, the tech is what's made this matchup very, very difficult for me to decide. As I said, I'm fairly certain that UNSC Marines are the better warriors overall. I also think that most of their tech is as good, if not better, than that of the Colonial Marines. However, there is one thing which really helps the Colonial Marines out: their smart gun. The auto-targeting abilities of this gun, its accuracy, its stopping power, basically everything makes it an incredible, deadly threat. However, ultimately, I don't think that it will be enough to take down the more experienced UNSC Marine squad. I'm sure the smart gun will likely, if not take down, injure one Marine, but with all of them working together, particularly with the more impressive ranged weapons, in my opinion, of the UNSC Marines and the limited mobility offered to the operator of the smart guns, I think the Marines, the UNSC Marines that is, will be able to take the weapon and the operator down. Without that weapon, UNSC Marines have better armor, better electronics, better communication, better coordination, better skills, and better or at least as good weaponry. Ultimately, the smart gun will make this one close, but it's not enough to bridge the crazy experience gap that UNSC Marines have over Colonial Marines. For that reason, I give the UNSC this matchup and I say that they win 6 times out of 10. That is, however, just my opinion. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Am I underestimating the abilities of the Colonial Marines? Am I overstating just how good the UNSC Marines were? Does one side have some secret weapon or technology that I don't know about? Let me know down in the description. Anyways guys, thank you so much for watching. This has been EckhartsLadder. May the Force be with you.